Back on the Boulevard, Thursday, April 25th. As always, here to prove to you there is no such thing as football season. We are presented by the Believe Network, here to lead you in to one of football's biggest nights, the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. And we have some suspense of our own in the UFL this weekend as we reach the halfway point of the regular season. Hard to believe. It's just flying by. This week, two sacred XFL conference rivalry games that could really shake up the standings. Home underdogs seem to be the theme across UFL Week 5, and I am officially declaring this upset weekend in the UFL. Joined by the producer, director, and owner of Studio Z, Chris Zook. Zook, nights like these, finally, we don't have to sell football to the casuals, because at least for the weekend, it's back in the spotlight, baby.
Yeah, I'm excited for this week. Draft tonight, next couple days, UFL all weekend. I'm in heaven.
And this year, we get the full day 3 of the NFL Draft and then UFL at night.
Right.
So maybe some strategic planning going on by the two leagues there. We hope to watch it all. And if you're a UFL fan, you might be watching some of these 6th and 7th rounds and look for some of these guys to play in the league in 2025 and beyond. On tonight's show, it is do or die for the DC Defenders, who desperately need to bounce back with a conference win. The good news, we're back in Audi Field, baby, where Reggie Barlow's boys are unbeaten, hosting a team that they played their absolute best against last season. Will that translate to 2024? We mentioned it already. I think it's upset weekend in the UFL. You got 3 home underdogs, and if you know anything about betting, that could be a recipe for some chaos, some upsets, for ultimately the unexpected to happen. We'll also have an appearance from one of the good guys, one of the few national media personalities who doesn't feel like they're above spring football. That is Mike Ryan. Can't wait to chat with him. We'll talk everything. Battlehawks, Defenders. We talked ratings, attendance. We talked DFS, literally everything. So we'll wrap it up with our Week 5 best bets. We'll take a look at the People Gambler and his DFS selections. Hit us with a like. Go ahead and share RT if you're on Twitter and X so we can keep doing these absolutely free. Let's take a quick glance at our UFL Week 5 standings here tonight. If you're on podcast, Birmingham leading the USFL side at 4-0. Michigan with a loss in Week 4 to drop them to 2-2. Showboats at 1-3 with a head-to-head win over the Houston Roughnecks, who sit in last place in the USFL Conference, but did get their first win last week to make them 1-3. In the XFL, things are heated. Battlehawks on top at 3-1 with a win over the Brahmas, also 3-1. The Brahmas with a win over DC at 2-2. And the Arlington Renegades desperately seeking that first win at 0-4. So let's hop into Week 5. Another regional doubleheader for the UFL this weekend. And somehow this one that we're going to start with only being televised in 11% of American homes. Come on, Fox. I mean, I get the Birmingham Stallions are your baby. And I get, people have the app and they can watch both. But if you don't have the app, hit up Zook, please. Please hit him up. He might have a solution. But that doesn't change the fact that Fox is blatantly ignoring the de facto XFL South championship game rematch between Bob Stoops and Wade Phillips. This thing got heated last year, and we have bad blood already. A.J. Smith in his presser said this was the Super Bowl, and he's coming after guys like Donald Payne, who took that XFL South title and a championship appearance away from them when they were in Houston last year. It's San Antonio at Arlington. Brahmas favored by 2.5. Total sitting at 42.5. Forecast looking like high 70s. Some strong winds with a pretty good chance of thunderstorms. So I believe this is the first night game in Renegades history. Should look really cool to get Choctaw Stadium under the lights. And I hope the rain holds off for the fans, or we might have to squeeze in an underbet before kick. Start with the San Antonio offense. What did we think of Quentin Dormady last week? Well, one thing comes to mind when I watch Dormady, and that's chicks dig the deep ball. You see him slinging it here. I mean, if A.J. Smith was maybe a little pissed off that the Brahmas offense didn't hit a single pass play over 15 yards in their loss to the Battlehawks, they cleaned that right up in week 4. They had 5 pass plays of more than 15 yards in the first half against the Michigan Panthers. And shockingly, none of them went to Cody Latimer, who I came in thinking might be Dormity's best target. But Jontre Kirkland and Justin Smith got all the love. They're the first UFL receiving duo to both go over 100 yards in the same game. So we know the Brahmas are going to throw the ball. It's the run game that has been lacking for A.J. Smith's offense. And that's not a knock on John Lovett. I think he's played really well, showed his versatility. He had a few highlight runs, especially on the last drive where he made about 8 guys miss. He looked like he can shoulder the load with Anthony McFarland being out, and he's probably going to have to do that again. McFarland still not practicing with that shoulder injury. So to me, it's kind of been the underuse of the run game, and we saw this a little bit in Houston last year where I thought they could have fed Max Borgi a little more, but they haven't been efficient enough on third down. Brahmas just 37% on the year in that category. So they've really got to start running the ball effectively on first and second down. That's going to set up those third and shorts. And if you know A.J. Smith, he's a big 4-down territory guy. I mean, Brahmas are 7 for 10 on fourth down conversions. That's highest in the league by far. So when you touch on the matchup against the Arlington defense and how the Brahmas can score, what this matchup is going to look like, well, I think San Antonio can score 25 here in good weather conditions. It's the bad weather that might handcuff that pass game a little bit. You might want to tilt that edge to the Arlington defense, but it's looking like it's going to be severe thunderstorms or no rain at all, and there's really going to be no in between. So don't be surprised if we get another delay on Saturday night. We know Arlington's defense, for the most part, has been atrocious, and they are a little better against the pass than the run, so maybe that helps them a little bit against this air raid. I think it's interesting. Ajene Harris, the starting corner for the Renegades, going up against his old squad, so maybe some bad blood there for a guy who got passed up by the Brahmas in the draft. And I think San Antonio, there's just too many guys to try to tackle in open space. John Lovett, like I said, very good tailback. He can do it on third down. He's going to get the carries inside the goal line. And with Speedy Stevenson, they basically have a second running threat that they can honestly use as a second back. So Arlington, not a good sign, giving up 110 yards a game on the ground. The Brahmas could definitely take advantage of that. The San Antonio offense only had 40 rushing yards, so that has to improve from last week. But I think this actually might be the best chance for the Arlington defense to finally step up in a ball game. They know this scheme, right? They faced it, 3 times last season, twice in the regular season, and then once in the XFL South Championship game. So it's no secret what A.J. Smith is going to try to do here. I still would give the edge to Quentin Dormity and the San Antonio offense, though maybe not as much as the experts are. I noticed this line actually opened up at 1.5 for the Brahmas, and a lot of people are just looking at records thinking Arlington 0-4, and listen, I would never bet on Arlington again. Like, to me, they're the Renegades. I don't have to say that again. But 1.5 to 2.5 signifies a movement that money's coming in on the Brahmas, and you're looking at this offense. Well, check the weather, and also know that Arlington's defense still has some dogs on it, potentially missing a few interior defensive linemen, though. I still give the edge to San Antonio's offense. Flipping sides of the ball and looking at the Renegade offense now, man, I don't know. Where do you start with this group? I think it starts up front. They don't have a good offensive line. And they lost Garrett McGinn for the year. That was the, I think, first practice of training camp. That was a dagger. They only have one offensive lineman back from that entire XFL title run last year. I think Cameron Hunt was the only one left. So these guys they brought in, they just aren't getting it done. It hasn't been good. They can't run the ball. If they go over 100 yards, it seems to be a miracle. They haven't had a single explosive run of more than 20-plus yards this season. That's nobody else in the UFL is having that problem. Only Arlington. And as statistically good as Luis Perez has been, it's not translating in the win column. He's not on the same page as Chuck Long. They're rushing out of the huddle to get to the line of scrimmage, and they're scrambling to get snaps off. They're not subbing in Lindsey Scott enough, and when they are, they're only giving him a play or two, so not giving him a chance to get in rhythm. He needs to have drives and maybe even full quarters to himself. I don't know why they're not doing that. I mean, last week was rock bottom for this Arlington offense. The drops, the slips, they had several miscommunications. I mean, the ineptitude on third down. I think you can only improve on that kind of stuff from last week, and this is a really good receiving core. Deontay Burnett is going to have some folks to prove wrong on that other sideline. You remember, he was Houston's number one receiver for A.J. Smith's offense, and they passed on him in the draft. I was surprised when I saw San Antonio opt for a guy like John Trey Kirkland over Deontay Burnett. And people will say, what are you talking about? Kirkland's better. Of course he is. But Deontay Burnett is very solid, and you saw that last week against Houston. San Antonio's in trouble on the defensive side of the ball this week. Everybody's hurt. They are going to be missing half their defensive line and edge rusher group, and they just cut a corner in Teez Tabor, who was a former NFL draft pick. I guess this is a pretty good pass defense, but they weren't liking what Teez was showing out there. That might signify Cam Dantzler, who was a new signing in the secondary, to finally make his debut. I guess we'll see, but they do get to the quarterback surprisingly well, even though they've been completely ravaged by injuries. I mean, think about the Brahmas injuries so far. They've lost their starting quarterback, their starting tailback, 3 starting offensive linemen, and now half the defense is going to be out for this week. So I'm giving the Arlington offense an edge here. You can call me crazy. No, I'm not betting on them. Of course, let me say again, I would not bet on this team if I were you, but they are going to be my pick straight up here, Zook. Actually, I need you, Arlington, to get a win. Not for my best bets, but for my DC defenders this week. And DC could really use the help in this case, but that's not why I'm going with them, because of the bias there. I said after they lost last week, I still think they can win 4 games. I think this will be the first win in a 3-game win streak. They're going to have Brahmas, Panthers, Showboats, and then back to the Brahmas. I don't think they beat the Brahmas twice. I think they can get one of these, though. I think this will be the one at home, and I think they win 3 straight from here. So I wish they didn't do this stupid thing to me, Zook, where every time I bet on this team, they make a complete fool of me. I feel like I'm safer in my analysis this week because I'm not betting on them, and I'm going to turn out being right because I don't actually have any money. And Luis Perez and Sal Cannella are going to come out looking like Mahomes and Kelsey this weekend.
That's a bold statement.
They do sometimes. They did against DC. They did in the championship game. You just never know with this team.
I get it, but
no action on them. Are you taking the Renegades is the question.
Listen, when you text, no, no, not until they do something. And when I was reading on my phone, update this, Matt picks Arlington. I'm like,
typo?
And then even going into the show, I'm like, I hope that's who we really picked, because I put it on.
Well,
I put it on the graphic.
They're not going 0-10, so it becomes a matter of
right.
Who are you going to pick? Who are you going to pick to beat them? Next week, Michigan. Week after, Memphis. Probably one of those two. They're not going 0-10.
All right, I'm just not taking a 3-1 team.
Why do you like San Antonio? I'd like to know.
I mean, I just think they're better on both sides of the ball, and they're better on both sides of the ball, and their offense is so much better. And we've been talking about Arlington's defense being Swiss cheese the entire year. So you do the math. You think AJ's going to carve them up? He knows what to dial up. That's all I'm saying.
There is some internal motivation for the Brahmas.
Sure.
Going back to that revenge factor, but I don't know. It doesn't get worse than it did in Week 5 for the Renegades. They've hit their bottom. They're at rock bottom right now. This team probably finishes 3-7 or 4-6. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they are going to win some games for sure. Not betting on them. Not betting on Arlington, but I do pick them straight up. Let's go to the primary game in this regional doubleheader. And from a TV coverage perspective on Fox, this one is going on in 89% of American homes. And I'm 89% sure Skip Holtz is lying to us when he says this isn't a pre-planned situation with the quarterback room. Listen, it's the Stallions and the Roughnecks on the USFL side. We're going to have Birmingham, again, a large favorite, this time on the road by 7.5. Total is at 42.5. Forecast for H-Town looking like high 70s, some strong winds, could have a pop-up storm just like Arlington, but much less of a chance of rain than that game in Arlington. All right, let's start with the quarterback carousel here in Birmingham. Who's it going to be this week, Skip? Who's it going to be? I think Matt Corral just bullied his way through that game. He had a bad start with some turnovers, and we're going to look at some of this. Here's the bad start that Matt Corral might have had. But he took a bunch of massive hits. He got hurt in this game. He stayed in the game and took more of a beating. And we could actually see here on the video Matt Corral and some of the hits that he was able to take. After going 0-4 in the red zone, should Birmingham have even won that game? I'm not taking credit away from them, but 0-4 in the red zone is not going to get you another win. I mean, that is the way that they're able to win games has been different each week. I just don't think that's going to be one of them. Are we taking turns here? Is this going to be Adrian Martinez by default? I guess we're going to see, but whoever it is, they're going to run the ball. And I did want to kind of mix in some run pass stats here for the Birmingham Stallions. Birmingham runs it on 53% of their offensive snaps. That's more than anybody in the UFL. The next closest is Michigan with 45%, and the league average is 40%. So Birmingham's run heavy. Even if they are missing CJ Marable, who hasn't practiced, I'm not too concerned this offense will really change with the absence of Marable. I mean, he's only given them 2.8 yards a carry now, and, you know, it might be a little refreshing for Stallions fans to see Ricky Person get that full workload. Houston's defense looking great against the run on paper so far, but I mean, they are second in the league in run defense. They're best in yards per carry allowed. Will that cause trouble for Birmingham? Houston was not good against a mobile quarterback, which I think is important when you're going against either Corral or Martinez. In week 3 against E.J. Perry, they give up 9 carries for 60 yards and 2 scores. So I don't have much faith in that area for them to be able to stop a running quarterback. But I'd like to think that the Houston defense that we saw against Arlington is going to show up again in front of that home crowd. I mean, you go back, the Houston Gamblers, who are now the Roughnecks, they were the last team to beat Birmingham before this 11-game run started. So for the Stallions offense, I see a very similar performance in week 2 against Michigan. I think that's how this game is going to sort of play out. Martinez started that game. They played with their food in the red zone the same way that they did last week, the same way that they've kind of done all year. But they did control the line of scrimmage. They controlled the time of possession. They gutted out 20 points and got a win in week 2. And I think they do the same. It's probably going to be like 23 tops here. But Birmingham's not scoring 30 like they did against Memphis. They need to get Jay Sternberger the ball more. The dude is a yards after catch machine. I mean, he's averaging almost 20 yards per catch as a tight end. Why is that guy not have the ball in his hands more often? They have got to find ways to get him the ball. He is always open. I think the Birmingham offensive line definitely took a step back last week, while Houston's D-line is getting better. So, and I was also impressed with Houston's secondary. You're seeing some of the footage here. A guy like Keandre Thomas coming back into the lineup could really be a number one corner for you. So I am going to give the edge to Birmingham's offense slightly here, regardless of what quarterback it is. Again, by the time you watch this, or there might be some new information out, I would guess Martinez, but again, it doesn't really matter. They both play similar styles against a Houston defense that's really going to be able to game plan against either of those guys. Flipping sides of the Houston offense now against the Stallions D. This is where we're going to find our edge in this game. Houston's weakness all season has been up front. It's no secret there. But Reed Sinnett has actually done a pretty good job in that RPO game, getting the ball out fast enough and not taking a ton of sacks. They throw a lot of quick slants. Kind of reminds me of DC's offense a little bit, honestly. And I came into the year knowing little to nothing about this receiving core, but they've introduced themselves a little bit here. They're definitely not the worst receiving core in the league. I actually think this receiver room might be the second best in the USFL conference from a depth perspective. But the pass game just isn't going to be the focus for Eric Price's Roughneck offense. C.J. Johnson's going to lean on Mark Thompson here. And he's already saying in press conferences he's looking for 20 to 25 touches for Thompson. Limited usage last week, only saw 9 carries, but seemed to really spark that offense when he was in the game. He looked a little uncomfortable at first, but he shook off the pain as the game went on. You could tell he's still a little hobbled, and I know this is a completely overhauled Birmingham defense from the last 2 USFL seasons, but Thompson looked really good against them last year. Actually ran for I think 80 yards and 3 touchdowns. And like we said, the Gamblers were the last team to beat the Stallions before that win streak. So Thompson is capable. Realistically, I don't think you can beat Birmingham with a pocket passer like Reed Sinnett. Birmingham's kryptonite all year is going to be mobile guys who can get around like a Jordan Tamu, who they struggled against last week. They didn't manage a single sack against DC. That will probably change. I look for them to get back to that way they win games, which is to dominate the line of scrimmage in the trenches. Even without Scooby Wright, who I wanted to touch on quick. Scooby Wright suffered a season-ending neck injury. He goes to the IR, ending his season and possibly his career. Just some devastating news. Scooby Wright is a back-to-back spring football champion with the USFL Stallions, and a fan favorite would really be an understatement at this point. It comes to the bond that he's built with that Birmingham community, and as we know, was one of the most electric defensive players to watch during his time at Arizona in college football, where he was being talked about for the Heisman Trophy. So best wishes to the Shark Dog, and wherever his next chapter in life is going to take him. If he wants to play again, I hope he's able to. If not, we know we'll see him again in some form in the football universe. I expect an inspired effort from his teammates playing for him. That he's the heartbeat and the lifeblood of that locker room, the captain of that defense, and they are going to play hard and fast for Scooby Wright. I mean, there's guys like DeMarcus Gates and JoJo Tillery that have been with Scooby Wright with those 2 championship runs, and I know I'm missing a few guys as well. There's a couple of guys who have been part of John Chavis's unit for a while now. So I think big advantage to the Birmingham defense here. I think the Roughnecks are obviously going to try to pound it early, but eventually they're going to have to air it out with Reed Sinnett because they're going to be trailing in this ball game, and that's when things could get ugly. Ponies are the pick for me, Zook, to start 5-0. I'd put this somewhere around a 22-15 type of ball game. I think the smallest of leans on the Houston cover. I do like the home underdog in this situation. I'm not going to bet it. I do love this under. I think these are 2 really good defenses. And Zook, I got to say, you back Houston, they lose, right?
Yep.
You fade Houston, they beat you.
Yep.
And you hate this team like I hate the Renegades.
I don't necessarily hate them.
That's because of Reed Sinnett. Yeah, you see, you're an Eagles guy.
That's
but
right.
That has to be a pain in the ass for you.
It is a little bit. And again, it's betting this year is a little challenging. We're getting there. I'm not worried about it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Um, this is a pick for me. Just like I'm not going to pick Arlington at all until they win a game. I'm not going to go against Birmingham until they lose a game. They're just a better quality team, and if you look at them, yeah. So DC sticks with them last week, right? They still win.
What's that quotation mark all about?
It's just it's an attack.
I
that,
mean,
sticks
1
with them
second left, victory.
in the rain and lightning, whatever. DC gave them everything they could handle, and they still won. So that's what good teams are all about. Not playing well, which Birmingham didn't play well, and still winning. That's all I'm saying.
So we both agree Birmingham to 5-0. We both also agree that if Houston was able to pull this off somehow, biggest upset of the season, without a doubt.
Well, I think anybody that beats Birmingham at this point, besides St. Louis, will be an upset.
I could see that. I also think, like I said, slight lean to Houston on the 7.5. I think they can get inside a touchdown. And I love the under. Not to give away my best bet, but this under is, I mean, these are just two defenses that are going to go after each other. So that is our Saturday night slate. Both night games, so you can actually enjoy a full day of the NFL draft. And if you're a UFL fan, you're going to want to watch in those 6th and 7th rounds and some guys coming out that could play in the UFL in 2025 and beyond. And then at night, you can kick back for some split screen UFL action. A special guest joined us on the Boulevard tonight, so drop us a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you want more of these, we'll show them to you. Joining us now, one of our most prominent spring football allies in all of sports media. He actually came on the show last year and spoke to us about a vision of the USFL and XFL one day uniting. Welcome to Springball Boulevard, Mike Ryan.
Thank you for having me back, Maddie. Thank you for really being the caretaker for spring football. You've been a wonderful champion for the sport. I get almost all of my news from you, and it's not an easy job. So I hope you know that there are people out there that appreciate it. I wanted to give you your flowers.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, and we appreciate you for tuning in. I wanted to start. How much do you expect the NHL and NBA playoff ratings to suffer when going head-to-head with UFL Week 5?
How have the ratings been trending? Again, keeping the theme of you educating me on some, because I do think that there have been some missteps, and some of that stuff has been necessary because, look, I thought the most recent incarnation of the XFL really got the timeline down. And people were at a fever pitch for football. It made perfect sense. You go from the Super Bowl right into spring ball. But all the latency that popped up with these two leagues merging has really put the league in a unique spot. Now would be the time where the season's kind of crescendoing and you have playoff battles and you're constantly checking the standings. It's hard to try to get your traction against such a congested sporting calendar. I mean, they're trying to get off the ground and going head to head with things like the Masters, even though the Masters ratings were down, and maybe the Masters were impacted by the UFL. But I do hope, for everybody's sake, that the league continues. It seems as though there's discussions about expansion. Hopefully, what they realize is they've misjudged the sports calendar, understood that they had to make some adjustments for everything to fall into place, but there are two huge missteps. Well, three. The branding, not a fan. Number two, how do you have the NFL tell you that your kickoff rule is amazing and decide that that's no longer for you? And number three, you got to move that start date up right after the Super Bowl.
I completely agree. And in conversations with some of the management, it seems like that will be the case. They're talking about 2025 a lot, and how they had to scramble to get this together because of government regulatory approval and things of that sort. They were way behind schedule. And I think if we were a fly on the wall, we would understand a little bit more why it had to be March 30th. But going forward, you're right. Not acceptable. Has to be back to a week after Super Bowl, especially for the players who are ultimately going to love that.
Oh, 100%. I'm sure the league has a a very quick antitrust rebuttal to why it is that they started. It is what it is. I'm happy that we have spring ball, but I also can openly acknowledge that this is not the greatest relaunch for these two brands. And again, I don't know how in your discussions the overall branding of the UFL has gone, but there was something special about that X. It just, there was a brand equity and a brand loyalty, and I'm as passionate about the XFL as not. I'm not in your tier, but I'm tier 2, and I felt such a brand loyalty, and I'm going for the XFL teams. I still feel like it's us versus them. It's just weird to have it under this UFL umbrella, and I hope that they haven't spent too much marketing dollars on this whole UFL thing, and it could be something that could be reevaluated.
Yeah, it's no secret that all spring football fans were most fond of XFL 2020, and it's been a struggle to get back to that. And you wonder if that has a lot to do with the money that Vince McMahon was willing to invest, or if it's just neglecting things like that bring a big time feel to the sport.
Yeah, and I felt like more teams meant more recognizable names. You would have thought that the consolidation, and I do think the talent overall is pretty good, but you have some big marquee names in the world of spring football deciding that this isn't for them. You've covered that in episodes. I really loved your highly informative episode with AJ McCarron, where you realize that the Steel Workers Union is actually representing all these spring ballers. But I think that there's a lot of good data points, Maddie, from how the season has gone so far. I think that they miss certain markets. I'm sure that the dollars and cents say otherwise, but from a television viewing experience, I'd like to see more games. I I would like to see more creative windows. That's something that I really was quite fond of in the most recent incarnation of the XFL prior to this merger. Was they were taking hacks. It was all data mining, finding out which you'd have a random Thursday night game on FX, and it was just throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall to see what would stick. And I know that they're kind of doing that with this regional window that they're trying out. It's all good, but man, the NHL, if you look at from just a quality of play and television ratings, it's ascending. You have good stories to tell, even with baseball, that has found ways to tweak their sport and make it a little bit more captivating. I know that the NBA is their arrow is not necessarily pointing up, but this is the marquee part of their season. A lot of challenges out there for the XFL and for the UFL, and going head to head in the teeth of these these postseasons right now. I can we punt on that? Can we reevaluate? Can we make it so that I, as a spring football fan, but a huge NHL fan, as you can see, and a huge sports fan, I'm often regulating the UFL to a fourth TV with no sound. And if I'm not watching with sound, I can't get the player awareness. I'm doing what I can. I have DK contests, and I'm betting on it, and I'm reading stats. But there's something to be said if you don't have a window where you're like the standalone sporting event at that time, you're putting your product in a tough position.
I was going to ask about the NFL kickoff now and how they kind of ripped that off from the XFL. What is the next thing that you see the NFL taking away from the XFL or even the UFL?
Well, I hope it actually works the other way, Maddie. I hope that they realize that this is a good springboard into the league for some crucial roster spots. It's a good developmental league. They've been trying to get a developmental feeder system, and they have quite a good free one in college football. But they've been trying to work this out, and they've already kind of acknowledged that there were aspects of spring ball that they really liked. I love what I would love for the NFL, to answer your question more directly, and before I go on a tangent about the NFL actually pumping resources into spring ball, is the super challenge. I think is a great rule. That you get to challenge anything for one time, provided that you have a timeout. Like, I think that is a great rule. It'll inevitably open up a can of worms, and people will want more super challenges. But how many times when you're watching NFL ball are you frustrated when you hear a commentator inform you that that's not a reviewable play. Well, there's no
Yeah.
such thing with the super challenge. It's a great rule.
I can't
Because
wait for
ultimately,
the first fan base to have to, like NFL fan base, to have to deal with Dean Blandino explaining that he already reviewed the call, and if the coach would have challenged that, he would have flipped it. But that's not a reviewable play. But he's actually already looked at it, and he was waiting for that challenge to fly. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it does kind of have like a weird challenge inception to it, but like things like a one-time super challenge on a defensive pass interference. This is that I'm interested in hearing things like that. But on the opposite side of the coin is the NFL is doing just fine without pumping resources into Springball. But I would like they do get something out of it, and football is the national pastime, and it stays in front of sports fans' eyes for another few months. I hope the UFL has marketing inventory stacked against the NFL draft to remind football fans that this thing is actually going. And I would just like for the NFL kind of to formally crown this merged leagues that I have a difficult time calling the UFL. I hope that they see that it's important and they decide to actually do something that they've never been inclined to do, and that's pump resources. Use it as a developmental system for coaches, for referees. There's not many good referees in the NFL. This is a good training ground for them. You have network partners there that you can probably that would love to hear that the NFL is getting kind of involved. Not necessarily have feeder teams because the teams don't necessarily match up, but you know how NFL Europe had logos of the teams that players were under contract for, even though they were on the Rhine Fire. Stuff like that can really go a long way, I think.
Yeah, and they are working on building some stars. We talk about a guy like Ja'Cour Pearson. How does Ja'Cour Pearson this week avoid going 0-4 all time against the DC Defenders?
Well, relying on his immense talent, this is this is one of those. It's kind of like a manufactured rivalry. All of them are a little bit in Springball, unless people are physically getting lemons chucked at their head, I guess, in which that's cause for a real legitimate rivalry. But to me, these are the two franchises of XFL, V2, V3. These were good stories, great atmospheres when they're rocking and rolling. How we can actually do that, it's going to be kind of hard because they got a huge amount of quality, especially in that wide receiver core. The skill positions are as good, I think, as we've seen in Springball. Really, I do. But you got old red ass Greg Williams, and he will stop at nothing to be a party pooper.
These two teams in this environment, of course, it's going to be the best game of the year. And with DC going 2-2, it's hard for me to be as cocky as I was last year. 3-point dog for Greg Williams and Reggie Barlow in DC. So I'm confident.
There you go. There's a bulletin board material right there. That's disrespectful. Everyone's talking about the skill positions that the Battlehawks have. Why don't you go, DC fans, consider this an open challenge. Everyone's talking about the crowds that they have in St. Louis. There is one batshit crazy off their rocker fan base that throws projectiles at people. Now, don't do that anymore. But beer snakes, we need to see them. We need you to make that atmosphere as raucous as humanly possible, because me, as a Battlehawks guy, I want to test the metal against the best. And I want a crazy atmosphere because I want something that I can circulate in non-UFL group chats, Maddie, that I could say, take a look at this. And that's what that DC crowd has done in years past. I know it's a slower start than you're used to, but get some juice to it, man. The people, the power of the people, the crowds that pop off the screen, the noise, the beer snakes. We need it all this weekend because this is about not just a big game between two good teams and two good fan bases. This is about keeping this sport alive, pushing it to that next tier. It doesn't happen without those great crowds. It doesn't happen without that crowd participation. And it doesn't happen without Greg Williams' chapped red ass.
And as the #1 DC Defenders fan, I can promise you that this entire episode will be a vehicle for the raucous environment that we are going to get in Audi Field. All right, let's do some UFL this or that. Mike Pereira or Dean Blandino?
Ooh.
We got both of them this year.
Yeah.
It was only Dean last year.
I like the chaos factor of Dean Blandino. I the nonsensical logic that Dean sometimes applies, and there are times that I'm left sitting in my home. Did he actually really say that? Did he actually? There's almost like a make good notion. There's like an open secret that there's this concept of make goods out there. Dean Blandino, and it's not particularly close because Dean Blandino sometimes will just have the biggest head scratching moments that you could possibly have out of that fairly new broadcast position.
Matt Corral or Adrian Martinez?
Ooh, as a damn near 20-year veteran of fading Martinez's in college football, and really being confused as to what happened since Matt Corral left Ole Miss, I'm going to go with Adrian Martinez here.
Would you rather have the title game in San Antonio or St. Louis like it is this year?
St. Louis. Two good crowds, but St. Louis is, as we waxed poetic earlier, that needs to, in fact, every championship game needs to be in St. Louis until another market proves they can do what St. Louis is doing.
Well, Mike, before you go, I did want to ask for a friend. Let's say you received this wonderful XFL hat as a media gift at last year's championship game. So this season, you wore that hat while working in the press box of an unnamed UFL team. What would you say to the intern who demanded that you remove that hat because the XFL no longer exists?
Wow.
Yeah, just asking for a friend.
Wow. Whoa. Who did that? Do they not know who you are?
I'm not sure. It didn't happen to me.
The premier caretaker of spring football? You don't do that to Matty Fresh. You don't. Which team was this so I can hate them?
I don't know. I got to ask the guy who told me the story, but that happened to a real life person.
You got a general part of the country I can start isolating.
It was USFL conference, if that narrows it down.
Now the plot thickens.
Yeah, but
now the plot thickens.
Again, I thought it's a great hat, and nice.
It's a great hat,
and
it's a great hat, and it shows that you're for the cause. That unnamed friend. That's how dare they do that?
Yeah, can't get this one on the merch
friend
store.
Is you can add this unnamed friend to our UFL chat.
Okay.
We need more people being passionate about Springball.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that UFL chat because as you can see here with the Zoom subscription, the winnings from your DraftKings contest have kept the lights on around here at Springball Boulevard. So
we need more people signing up for that.
Yeah.
And Maddie has promised in that group chat that if the DC team goes all the way here, he is going to put out a track to really inspire Defender Nation. Shields up, lemons, the whole nine. Jordan Tiamu track. I'm familiar with your work for Penn State, even though I don't like Penn State really at all. There were some bops there, so I'm hoping for a spring ball bop. What are we gonna do? Because this is a big week. This is a week that I'm locked in. This is a game that we should all be looking forward to. I'm willing to do this wager. I win. You dress as a psycho Battlehawk fan, complete with feathers and all. You win. I will get you this Zoom Pro membership that you sorely need.
Outright. You're not going to give me 3. Not going to give me the points. Got to win outright.
It's close enough. I'm on the road. And you have Greg Williams chapter at ads.
That is Mike Ryan. Mike, thank you for joining us. And, hey, I'm in. If you're in, I'm in for the bet.
All right. That's a handshake. That's a handshake if you can see it.
Well, after watching that, some of you may be wondering, how's that a fair bet? Right? I'm going to get a Zoom Pro subscription. He's going to get me in Battlehawks gear. Here's why it's a fair bet. Mike knows St. Louis can't beat DC. He already knows it. You could hear it in his voice. You could see it in his eyes. You could tell it with his bet negotiations. He's thinking, big deal. When I lose, I'll just throw a couple of those Meadowlark dollars, get you a Zoom Pro subscription. I'm okay with my stakes being higher in this situation because my confidence in this game is higher. And I do want to let everybody know that's watching the stream tonight. Thanks for joining us. And we are debuting new merchandise. You can get a Springball Boulevard tee or a hoodie or even the best, a cold can koozie. Keep that Beer Snake beer cold. Link in the description. We just debuted some of that and are going to be adding more as time goes on. All right, you ready to get into this one, Zook? Plug your ears, buddy. We might be able to get this one in before the draft. It was March 8th, 2020, a simpler time in the world of sports, featuring the XFL in all its glory. We had raging beer snakes, savage fan bases, unfiltered sideline interviews, and Bud Light seltzer-stained locker rooms. What a time to be alive. In that version of the XFL, it was a young Jordan Ta'amu who was playing quarterback inside Audi Field for the first time, but not for the DC Defenders, for the St. Louis Battlehawks. And Jordan lost that day, and it didn't take him long to see the light, to see the tradition, to feel the prestige, the winning that was the DC Defenders. So Jordan is ours now. And last year, he goes 2-0 against his former Battlehawks. He crushed the dreams of that entire city by keeping them out of the XFL championship. So now, everything is on the line for DC. It's the streak of 10 straight home wins in Audi Field, a perfect 3-0 franchise mark against St. Louis, and the right to cement ourselves as the greatest fan base in spring football history. It's the Defenders and the Battlehawks. DC, a 3-point home dog. Total is our highest of the weekend at 47. Forecast for the district on Sunday is 85 and partly cloudy with a chance of one big-ass beer snake. I'll see you there. Let's start with the DC offense. How are they going to score on this St. Louis defense? Well, everybody wants to act like DC was so lucky and so fortunate to be in this game with Birmingham last week because the Stallions fumbled twice inside the 5. Oh, they made all these mistakes. That is not the case. DC fumbled on their first possession, too. They sat through a 90-minute rain delay in an opposing locker room. Then they come out in driving rains and they got a punt. Snap goes into the end zone for a safety. So excuse me if I'm not going to entertain the fact that, DC got all these breaks. The Stallions got plenty of them as well in this game. They were in the game because of Jordan Ta'amu and his will to win, and you're going to see the same on Sunday afternoon. Jordan's mobility took pressure off of that offensive line. They settled in up front, and they had their best game of the season. They're improving week to week at an astounding rate, and we identified that trend last week. They went head-to-head with a Birmingham front that had 15 sacks in the prior 2 games, didn't give up a single sack on Saturday night. That doesn't sound ideal for a St. Louis defense that could be missing up to 5 starters with injuries this week. So that front 7 it has some problems on the injury report. The DC receivers are improving as well. If we had a Player of the Week award, it would go to that guy, Kelvin Harmon. 5 catches, and felt like all of them outdid each other as far as big moments. He had 93 yards and a score, and he blocks a punt. I think the St. Louis defense, hats off to them. They looked great on Saturday, and they only allowed 127 yards of offense from Memphis, which is unbelievable. But may I remind you, Battlehawk fans, who you played. You played Memphis. And remember what Birmingham did to that same Memphis team. They smoked them, and then they came out and they struggled with DC's offense. Same thing's going to happen here. I expect that trend to continue. And listen, DC absolutely going to need more of that out of that run game. That backfield, it's going to have to come eventually. St. Louis is very strong against the pass. They're tops in the league in that category. But they haven't been so hot against the run. They've given up 7 rushing touchdowns. That's the worst in the league. But I wouldn't go getting flashbacks to Abram Smith quite yet. He had, 230 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Dome last year. Defenders are going to still try to have to find their footing in the run game. I thought Zaquandre White was a guy who showed some serious burst, came in after Cam Harris fumbled on that opening drive. I wouldn't be surprised to see White actually get the majority of carries in this one. Seems like they're going with the hot hand, and with injuries across that St. Louis defensive line and DC's front kind of hitting their stride, they're giving Jordan time to find these weapons like Chris Rowland and Vincent Smith, and I do give a slight edge to the Fred Keiss DC offense. I think that we saw a product last week against Birmingham that was capable of making a big play, and they showed explosiveness, and I think they can do the same. There's a reason this total is 46.5. Here's where the defenders face their biggest challenge of the season: the St. Louis Battlehawk offense. Stats aside, this is without a shadow of a doubt the best offense in the UFL, and I'd go even farther than that. This might be the best offense in spring football history. Better than P.J. Walker's 2020 Houston Roughnecks even. They were one step away from really establishing themselves as that early on, and it was just the run game. And now they figured that out. Jacob Sailors is the best running back in the league right now. I mean, it's the best offensive line in the UFL. They gave up 0 sacks on 45 dropbacks. They sprung Sailors for 6.3 yards a carry. AJ looking as efficient as ever, constantly raising the bar for himself. And it's not about throwing for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns for AJ. It's just about finding open receivers and winning games. They want to win a championship, and they do have some bad news, though. Their top 2 receivers, Darius Shepard and Hakeem Butler, both have not practiced yet this week. Shepard with a hamstring, Butler with a knee. Those 2 alone account for 40% of A.J. McCarron's targets. Keep an eye on that. That's almost 40%, actually over 40% of their production in the pass game. So it's a lot riding on whether those 2 play. And I'll get a rebuttal from you Battlehawk fans. You'll say, who cares? We got Peasy. We got Marcel Aitman. I get that. And this is the deepest wide receiver core in the league, but no Shepard is going to mean Peasy has to take on a full workload from the slot. I don't know if he's ready to do that coming back off injury yet. And as I talked about with Mike Ryan, he's 0-3 against DC in his spring football career. So he hasn't seen his brightest days in Audi Field. They did go re-sign Stephen Mitchell, a receiver that they cut in camp. So we'll keep an eye on Shepard and Butler. Ultimately, I think AJ is going to be okay behind that offensive line. He's going to throw to whoever's open, and the defensive formula is pretty simple here for DC. It's aggression. And the DC defense played their best game by far of the season last week. And they did it against the number 1 total offense on paper. So I don't know what more you want. Sure, they could have had some key stops there on the last drive and not allow them to get in the field goal range. But, they're going to have to get to the quarterback. He's going to throw it 50 times. He's going to sling it around Audi Field. And a few of those are going to be interceptable, as they were last season, as one was against Memphis when they took advantage of it last week. So you got to make the plays when they come to you. Got to find ways to limit Sailors. If DC can hold the Battlehawks to under 100 yards rushing and get, 2 or 3 takeaways, I don't care if AJ passes for 300 yards. That's okay. I don't think the Battlehawks are going to score 30 in this game like they have been. And DC has the offense to match up with a banged-up Battlehawks D. You sprinkle in a little bit of that Audi Field magic, which is obviously worth a couple of points, and you're going to get a season-altering DC defenders victory in this game. This really does feel like do or die, Zook, for the defenders, and it's the difference between being tied up with St. Louis at the halfway point here or being a full 2 games back. So I think that's going to reflect in DC's effort on Sunday. Who you got?
You know who I got.
Boo.
Number 1,
Throw lemons.
I'm rocking my gift.
He actually took all the lemons out of, oh yeah, there it is. Maybe that was the unnamed friend. He took all the lemons out of his fridge. I would have chucked some at him. You guys know what's coming. It's this propaganda against DC.
It's
you got
not,
lucky last week to be right about Birmingham. They didn't cover.
It's not propaganda.
Yeah, here we go.
You got St. Louis offense, best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, how'd they look last year against DC?
Calm down.
I can't
St.
ever
Louis
calm down against-
offense, best running back in the league. St. Louis offense, best wide receiver in the league. Come get it.
And
Let's
they all
go.
they all malfunction inside those walls,
Well, I mean,
as you witness your Sea Dragons do.
well, again, you guys got to like throw lemons and change the course.
Drink some beers.
Try
get
to
the
change
snake
the
going,
momentum of the game or whatever. And
Fight some people.
did we say
Like
this
that
last?
last
Did we say
year.
this last week? So I expect the only way DC has a chance is if they have a comeback victory. So in the
Wow.
in the last, was it 2 years? So last year XFL and this year so far, they have 12 W's, and what was the stat? 8 or 9 of them were comeback wins. That is a horrible recipe for success.
Well,
Last year they were good enough to do it. They're not this year.
might have to go score for score with this offense. I mean,
I don't think that St. Louis needs to score 30 like you said. I think they need to score 22 and they win.
okay. Well, yeah, we
That
maybe
don't disrespect that St. Louis
yeah.
defense
Well, do
either.
you have them? You have them covering in that case because I'm kind of curious where you go on the total here. I kind of lean. the
Yeah,
over.
I'm not going to bet it because
Kind
again,
of lean the over based on maybe this one going a little bit like DC Arlington.
I'm not going to bet it, but I do like St. Louis to cover. Was it -3?
At 3,
Yeah,
Okay.
I like them to cover.
I actually got it at a little better value, which will come up here soon. But all right, we know you want to watch a draft, so we're gonna breeze through this one because it's a good game. We'll watch it, but it's kind of a snooze fest. Closing out the weekend, it's a USFL conference tilt featuring 2 teams with starting quarterbacks that actually left the game with injuries in week 4. EJ Perry for Michigan headed to the IR. Case Cookus still toughing it out. They ran out of room to list Cookus's ailments on the injury report, but he's still going to play probably. It's the Panthers and the Showboats. Memphis, slight favorite here, just 1.5. Totals are lowest of the weekend at 40.5. And forecast for the Liberty Bowl says mid-80s and cloudy with a slight chance at a storm. So some pop-up storms all over the South. I'm going to be honest here. This is a tough game to handicap. Every now and then we get kind of a stay-away special where you feel like the books have already beat you. This is that to me. You could present me really any number of outcomes here, and I wouldn't be shocked unless it goes into like the 30s and we get a shootout. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll start with the Michigan defense. Really, only edge I could find here is that the Michigan defense is definitely better than the Memphis offense. They're the heartbeat of this team. Mike Nolan, certainly proud of this unit, and that's their whole identity as a team. Relies on the defense, and they did give up a ton of yards to San Antonio, but I think they struggled a lot with the Brahma speed. Memphis doesn't have that speed, and at the end of the day, Michigan still gave up less than 20 points, which not a lot of teams have done. In fact, I don't think anybody has done against the Brahmas. So the key here is Michigan plays great second halves on defense. They're best in the league on third down, allowing less than 35%. I expect them to bounce back here against a Memphis offense that, frankly, might be the worst I've ever seen in spring football. I mean, it's terrible. They played 4 quarters of football last Saturday, and they had 127 total yards of offense. They are allergic to the second half. They have 6 touchdowns the entire season and 6 touchdowns in the first half. What is that? I mean, this team hasn't found the end zone once in the second half, 4 games into the season. And it's going to get worse if Case Cookus continues to get banged up. Not to mention, top 2 receivers, Dawood Davis, Vinny Papali, both limited in practice, and I'm sure they'll play. Everybody is having to play hurt for Memphis because of how dire this situation is. They had a little bit of the run game going, but it only lasted a drive. Edge goes to the Michigan defense. I think they dominate up front, and that'll be the story there. Flipping sides of the ball, not too much to get into other than E.J. Perry is out for the year. And that marks the third day one starting quarterback that is out. So you could talk about offensive line play being subpar with injuries to Garbers and Garantano and now Perry. Cookus has been battered. Is that why some of these fringe NFL quarterbacks are not playing in this league? I don't know. I think you look at the NFL and we're getting just as many quarterback injuries. So it's happening all across football, and it's just something you have to deal with. The Panthers did make a splash signing at quarterback that I wanted to highlight quick. Bryce Perkins. That name kind of jumped off the UFL transactions page at me because I remember him from Virginia, and he was a star in college. That Virginia football program has only had 3 winning seasons in the last 15 years. He was there for 2 of them. To put into perspective how good he was there, he was the only quarterback ever to lead them to the ACC championship game, and he was second-team All-ACC, only behind who other than Trevor Lawrence. So, actually, Perkins, one of only 2 college quarterbacks in 2019 to pass for 3,000 and rush for 700. The other one, Zook, Jalen Hurts. So where'd this guy come from in Bryce Perkins? I really want to see him play. He's not going to play this week. But he spent the last 3 years with the LA Rams. He got a couple of regular season starts with them when Stafford went down. So it's really hard for me to watch this Perkins film and say, oh, yeah, Danny Etling is going to start the rest of the year. I don't know. Bryce Perkins looks really good. But it's going to be Etling on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. And he's going to get a crack at a Memphis defense that is dead last against the pass. They completely fold on third down. They just cut a starting safety in Christian McFarland, and they have another 4 defensive starters on the injury report. So I think that Memphis front can match up, but the Michigan O-line looking sort of thin last week with giving up 6 sacks to the Brahmas. I don't know. To me, Memphis doesn't really do anything well. And I can't bet on Memphis here. I also wouldn't be shocked if, like I said, Memphis was to pull out a win. I don't know. This could be a pretty important game with USFL conference playoff positioning. I don't know. I feel like with Memphis you could get big passing plays, and with Michigan, right? You got Marcus Sims, who, you know, I would take the under in this game, but then Sims is just going to go catch 3 80-yard touchdowns on me. Like he leads the UFL in receiving, and he's just an explosive play machine, deep threat. So this is a coin flip, but I'm going to go Michigan here, Zook, with the pick. Like I said, defense too good. Low scoring game, probably right around the total. But again, this would be actually the 3rd upset that I'm picking this week. This is upset week in the UFL, so get ready for it.
For you, I'm going the other side.
Wow, really? I actually didn't expect that. You never show me your picks, which I like that you don't, because I like to react. Wow. Wow.
I'm going in this one. I think the defenses are somewhat equal. Comes down to the quarterbacks for me. We got Cookus greater than Danny Not So Dimes.
Well, yeah. Etling is, yeah.
That's it. I mean, I think it's going to be tough sledding for that Michigan offense. I just haven't seen enough out of him. He hasn't played. He's obviously very limited, but from what I have seen, I'm not sold.
Let me ask you this: Michigan or Memphis to the playoffs, or Houston?
This is tough.
If you had to decide right now,
I'm going to lean Michigan.
Okay.
But again, I need to see see what they do this weekend. I'm leaning it. I'm not sold.
I feel like this is the game where people are going to sleep on it, and it's not going to turn in a great number ratings wise. But as far as like landscape of the playoffs, it really matters.
Yeah, and if it stays this way where Danny is starting, I would lean the Showboats to make the playoffs. That's right now. We'll see.
That is the Panthers and Showboats. All conference games in Week 5, so no official Battle of the Brands Tour game on the lineup this week. But I am making my return to Audi Field, and I'm pumped about that. I'll be there for the first time since DC hosted that glorious XFL North Championship trophy last year. We got Battlehawk fans right where we want them here, guys. I need everybody to show up, buy tickets, college students, Get them cheap. Ride the Metro. This is a big week, like Mike Ryan and I talked about. These are Battlehawk fans who have been hypnotized by kind of watching their offense the last 2 weeks, and they forgot who daddy is. So it's time for DC to show up. Get loud. I'll see you there. Greg Williams. He's the guy this week. And I'm getting him at 3.5. So let's roll right into best bets here, Zook. DC plus 3.5. The line is now 3. I won't take responsibility for moving it. I did lock it in a little early this week. I would also take 3, especially looking at that Battlehawks injury report. And I also like the Birmingham-Houston under 42.5. I'm going back to the well with a Houston under, and I'm going to be really upset if Reed Sinnett comes out firing like he did against Michigan, and they were able to put 20 points up on the board. It seemed like the Houston offense, even though they looked all right last week, they only scored 17 points. These are 2 really good defenses. I could see, like I said, 22-15 or something like that.
I don't love your under just because of what you're saying. Birmingham has proven that they're going to struggle to start, but they're still going to win. So
I just feel like
are
even
they going to give up, like you're saying, are they going to give up points early?
Birmingham's going to have to score 30 for this game to go over. I don't see Houston scoring more than 15. Not against this defense. I mean, really nobody has scored 20 on Birmingham yet, right? So, yeah,
that's a fair point.
Yeah, it's just a really good defense, and I think they're a little like Scooby Wright, like being injured. That fires them up, and the fact that like they didn't get a sack against DC, that probably pissed them off. So I like the under, and Mark Thompson's probably going to get that Derrick Henry type workload with like 30 carries, so that'll only slow the total down. You're pretty confident in the ponies this weekend.
Yeah, I like the ponies.
I can't believe you're doing this again with Houston. Haven't you learned? I learned with Arlington. As bad as I wanted to take the Renegades again as a dog because I think they're actually going to win. I mean, Houston, you back them, they lose for you. You fade them, they beat you.
It's the
Here
same
you go
thing.
again. Fade them again.
I don't see them sticking with them at all.
Yeah.
First half maybe, but this is a full game bet at -7.5, and I have complete confidence in this. I didn't tell you this, but I actually did put 2 units on this.
I will give you credit.
Ooh, is that your pony?
I don't know. That's I will give you some credit because a very profitable betting strategy is to forget what happened last week and try it again. And that's kind of what like I would like to do with Arlington, but I refuse to do it because it's been so bad over the history.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm not doing that either.
Like this can't happen
But
twice to you, can it?
Well, it can, and here we go.
I can't believe you're fading Houston with an Eagles jersey on. Reed Sinnett was once an Eagle.
I like me some Reed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You just don't have enough firepower.
I think it's close. I think it's going to come down to a conversion or 2. But that only 3 plays. We had 5 last week. We kind of learned our lesson. We almost went 5-0, but then Arlington choked that game away on Sunday. So to recap best bets, I got Birmingham and Houston under 42.5. I got DC plus 3.5 on Sunday. And Zook is rocking with the ponies, 7.5-point road favorite against Houston. All right. Ready for DFS, Zook? I didn't forget this week. Let's check out the People's Gambler.
Not if I'm on it, so you feel me? Welcome to the Lou. We back, baby. It feel good to wear the blue. Just chill. They already know what it is, man. Can't be fucked with.
Stardom, Adrian Martinez. It's pretty obvious what Skip Holtz is doing. He is rotating starting quarterbacks until one separates himself from the other. Martinez was absolutely lights out in his lone start this year, throwing for 334 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Showboats 2 weeks ago. He is also a threat to scramble and gash the defense with his legs, as he is second in rushing yards with 164 and averages 9.6 yards per carry. Surrounded by the league's best offense, Martinez has the ability to put up big points and be the highest scoring DFS player of the weekend. Start Adrian Martinez. Sit him, Mark Thompson. Thompson was proven to be a valuable component to the Roughnecks offense, running the ball 9 times for 34 yards and a touchdown in their win over Arlington last week. The Roughnecks face a tall task this week as they take on an undefeated Stallion squad who has the best defense against the run this year, giving up only 54.3 yards per game. On the flip side, Houston is dead last in rushing, averaging 55.5 yards per game and has given up the third most sacks. This is a horrible matchup for the Houston offensive line, and I believe the Birmingham front seven will be able to bottle up Thompson for minimal yards on Saturday night. Sit Mark Thompson. Sleeper, Chris Rowland. Going back to the well from week 1 with the sleeper pick. Friend of the show, Chris Rowland, will look to defend DC's home win streak against their biggest rival in St. Louis. Rowland has come on strong recently, catching 2 touchdowns the past 2 games and setting up his offense with great field position thanks to his electric return abilities. Points will be flying off the board early Sunday afternoon as this game has the highest point total of the weekend, and I believe Rowland will make it 3 weeks in a row with a touchdown score. Sleeper, Chris Rowland.
Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Chris Rowland going to score 4 touchdowns this weekend. Why not? I think the Bears are still on the clock. I'm impressed, Zook, with us tonight. We said we'd get off before they made the selection. They're still on the clock. Who are they going to take? Who knows? Caleb Williams at minus 20,000. But I do remember in the UFL draft, or at least the XFL side of it, Lindsey Scott Jr. was the number 1 pick. Can we please use him and stop having our number 1 draft pick sit on the bench, Arlington? We need you to win this week. We need you to knock the Brahmas down a spot in the standings so when DC moves to 3-2, they don't move to 4-1. For the producer, director, and owner of Studio Z, Chris Zook, I'm Matty Fresh, and you always remember, there is no such thing as football season. Enjoy the UFL weekend, and we'll see you Sunday night.